We're going to hear from Barbara Lenchevsky from the DEO. So if your jurisdiction has done a comprehensive plan update in the last few years, which probably most of us have done because we're required to do this periodically, you may have noticed that in your comprehensive plan updates, we're actually required to start including some language in our comprehensive plan to address the Peril of Flood Act. So some of you may have started, sort of ruminating on these concepts and what areas of your comprehensive plan can you start to weave in this idea of resilience. And so Barbara is going to come speak to us more specifically about this perspective from the Department of Economic Opportunity. Thank you.
Hello. I'm going to try to figure everything out here for a minute. I'm with the Department of Economic Opportunity. Some of you may know the State Land Planning Agency from the days of Department of Community Affairs. 2011, we all moved over at the behest of the governor, who wanted to create the new agency of Department of Economic Opportunity, and we have joined with a number of other sections of state government, which now coordinate better, hopefully. So we've got the Department of Division of Community Planning, and we review the comprehensive plans. We have a planner assigned pretty much to every community in the state. And some of you may or may not be familiar with comprehensive planning, but it's basically kind of the guide for all of your growth management, land use in your community. I have been working in this area for a number of years, over 20. Came to Florida some years ago originally to work in the Everglades National Park. I'm a biologist by training and got sucked into the planning world. But I'm just, very much involved with what's happening in Florida and growth, and just started loving it here and have not gone back to my home state of Connecticut. So I'm pretty much a native, not born, but have been here a while. Let's see, I have to do these. There we go. Okay. This slide shows the floodplain population gains that have happened in the state of Florida, and these have elicited some concern with the tide and flooding. In particular, saltwater intrusion, tidal flooding, failing drainage, malfunction in canals, beach erosion, habitat loss, reduced groundwater storage. All of these have become more problematic as density, the darker color orange, of people has increased throughout the state. And we have concerns about how to deal with those things in the community. I want to mention this. I'm not going to wait till the end because I might forget. We also have technical assistance grants to help with planning needs. That's a rare thing. There aren't that many. Whitney does it for you too. And we have usually about $25,000 to $45,000 per community yearly around April, May. It depends on what the legislature appropriates. And you can get information on that from me, or go to our website and look up community planning and technical assistance grants. And those can be used for planning peril of flood, pretty much anything you do with your comprehensive plan. So take a note and start looking for those around April. I keep forgetting to advance slides. Okay, so we do have the peril of flood statute. This is something that was put in place in 2015 by the Florida legislature into the comprehensive plan. It's pretty much the only new thing in the comp plan. So when you do your update for your evaluation and appraisal report, you're going to have to address the peril of flood. It's the only thing that's been put in statute that has to be newly addressed in your plan. And this statute, and you've got the citation there in Chapter 163, is in our review of the comprehensive plan. So basically, that's what I'll do. I'm the community resilience planner and the only one in the department. And used to be pretty much the only one in the state until other people came along in DEP. So we worked with this grant, as Whitney said, for a number of years, and I'm really glad things are developing now and getting to be much more funded and well spoken of. So I'm excited about that. The peril of flood statute is based on relevant data and analysis. So when you're trying to do this into your comprehensive plan, you want to include development and redevelopment principles, strategies, and engineering solutions that reduce flood risk in coastal areas. And these are, again, your current high tide events, your storm surge, flash floods, stormwater, runoff, and this is the part that's tricky. Those are current occurrences, things that are happening now, but it's also inserted the related impacts of sea level rise to future projections of that and impacts on all those other occurrences. So as the sea level rises, those events will become more frequent and possibly extend further into your community. So what we'd like you to do is to take a look at your vulnerability. Whitney talked a lot about that methodology and looking at that, and she listed some of the tools. We'd like you to look at this. In a good way of doing it is to do it with maps. There's a lot of tools that allow you to pull up data layers. You don't need to have GIS. You don't need to have the data. A lot of them are already pre-populated with that information for you. And you can go on NOAA site or Army Corps of Engineers, and you can push that little button and it'll complete kind of an analysis for you. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. With the mapping, you can visualize flooding, you can visualize the different impacts, you can allow for some more land use planning in the future and adaptation to the coastal risk. And people like maps and pictures, and the public can understand better when you show them, here are the resources and here are some of the impacts that we can expect. And usually what we're looking at and asking you to do is to do a short term, which is about 30 years forward, a midterm maybe 60 to 70, and a long term which could go out to about 100 years. And that's a long time in the future. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we're trying to plan. You don't want to put your infrastructure in, spend a lot of money, expect it to be there for 30, 40 years, and then find out that it's going to be underwater because you put it in the wrong place. So it's really an economic consideration. Okay, so this is actually, you're looking at the statute. These are the first three requirements of the statute that I've written out here. These are the things that people have the hardest time with, number 1 and number 3. Number 1 expects you to look at reducing the flood risk in coastal areas that are a result of your current high tide events, storm surge, etc., and the related impacts of sea level rise. So it really asks you to put development and redevelopment principles, strategies, and engineering solutions in your comp plan today when you're doing this. Not saying, well, we'll do it in 20 years, or maybe we'll put it in our development codes, we'll put it in our LDRs, or we'll think about it, or we'll coordinate with somebody else like 20 years from now and do it. We really want you to put some policies in. It's not that hard. You all know there's certain things that are happening in your community, and what we want you to do is actually put some policies, strategies in your plan that are going to say how to address those things. That's the first one. And also, skip over number 2 for a minute, and number 3 basically wants some site development techniques and best practices. So that's more of the kind of engineering solutions to reduce the flooding and claims of flood insurance policies. Both of these requirements are to your benefit. So it's something that you can start with slow. You can put in, a few policies or a few strategies. We don't expect you to cover everything. You can come back again. So number 2, the removal of coastal real property, that pretty much is going to have to be something like an acquisition plan. The wording is a little weird on that, but we're expecting that all of these things can take place as opportunity arises. So you want to do that when money is available and you have the opportunity to do that. The next 3 requirements are easy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. Basically, you have to adopt this language into your plan. That's that easy. The other ones, you have to think of strategies. These aren't that bad. You have to address the Florida Building Code, the Coastal Construction Control Line, if that's relevant in your community, and also encourage National Flood Insurance Program, CRS, the Community Rating System. I had some examples. Oops. This was just an example of policies that Titusville put in. And just to show you a map, these are basically data layers just showing different layers like flood risk, storm surge, the second one, and historical flood insurance claims. Multiple data sets, again, you put them together and it makes it more living and real to people. A little blurb about why and how to use these tools. I think you can really use your planning horizons and work with these data layers to come up with a good idea about where you're going to put certain development, where you might have some vulnerabilities and whether or not that's significant to you and your community. Some things you may want to fix, some things you may want to say, oh, well, we're going to have that be like an open area and have flooding there. So these are kind of 5 steps: procedural, outreach and education, protection. You can have hard or soft types of defensive measures, accommodation, strategic relocation, and avoidance. Redevelopment component, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Again, there's more policy examples. We had Boynton Beach with a policy example where they're actually looking at development sites and minimizing exposure. Another example, I'm breezing through these. People want to see these examples. These are another one from Titusville. This is vulnerable facilities and populations are directed away from floodable storm-affected areas. And you can have some illustration of how you can take community using FEMA buyout funds to buy out certain floodable areas and having open space. adaptation action areas, which are going to be talked about later on, but that's a designation that can be used this is Cutler Bay. They've done a good job. They actually had a big private land area that they kind of accessed into their community, an adaptation action area. You can protect resources that way. And some of your strategies that you can use listed here: coastal protection buffers, retrofitting structures, and considering green infrastructure. This was a floodway actually illustrated in a community in Tallahassee, where a park and trail were developed from those areas that were previously flooding and is now a very attractive place. And last slide gives you economic incentive for doing this. You can get credits for mapping areas, for taking certain steps for the National Flood Insurance and Community Rating System, and lower your flood insurance rates. And that's my contact info. I am there all day if you'd like to call, and I can walk you through any of this peril of flood statute and help you figure out what to do in your community and what the steps are, and offer technical assistance. And again, we have the technical assistance grant, and we work in coordination with DEP and their funding as well. So you can come and get planning grants from us. You can do infrastructure or other types of work with them. That's it for me. Thank you.